A new report claims that Russian detention centers have become breeding grounds for torture and human rights violations. And before I go any further, I must say this: these are claims that have been made by the Western media, and WION cannot vouch for their authenticity. So where do these claims really stem from? From a report by the Mobile Justice Team. This team is part of the UK, EU and US-sponsored Atrocity Crimes Advisory Group, or ACA. It was set up by the international human rights law firm and foundation called Global Rights Compliance. And the aim of this foundation is to support Ukraine's Office of the Prosecutor General against Moscow. So it goes without saying that the claims made in the report may stand true for the Western world. It does not mean that they have to be taken on face value by the rest of the world. In any case, what does the report actually state? Well, it claims to reveal an analysis of an initial pool of 320 cases of detention in Kherson across more than 35 identified detention centers. Of those victims, at least 43% explicitly mentioned practices of torture in the detention centers. And they have cited sexual violence as a common tactic imposed on them by Russian guards on both male and female prisoners. And the preliminary data apparently shows that even military personnel were most likely subjected to torture in the detention centers. And besides this, at least 36 victims from the pool analyzed mentioned the use of electrocution during interrogations. And at least one victim was forced to witness the rape of another detainee. And what is Moscow saying about all of these claims? Nothing. The Kremlin has consistently denied allegations of war crimes, and this time Russia's defense ministry did not respond to requests for a comment on the report's findings, as per reports. And as for Ukraine, it plans to take this report to global bodies. Ukrainian authorities are already, in fact, reviewing more than 97,000 reports of war crimes, and they have also filed charges against 220 suspects in domestic courts. And remember, if found guilty, high-level perpetrators could be tried at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, which, by the way, has already sought the arrest of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, here's the thing. What's happening in Ukraine is not just a military battle. It's also a battle of narratives, an information war. We've been telling you about this. The adversaries are the same, the Russian state media and Western media outlets, and they have both weaponized information for the benefit of their own governments. So one has to navigate things rather carefully, to say the least, to get an accurate account of what really is unfolding. Even specific battle stories are questionable. For instance, the number of casualties. Headlines in Western media saying Putin's forces are being humiliated, that they have suffered heavy casualties. The Russian media, on the other hand, saying that Ukraine's counteroffensive is failing. It's suffering heavy casualties on the battlefield. And these differences illustrate the kind of story each side wants to offer to its own people and to the world at large. Ukraine wants to encourage its people through the tale of a successful resistance. And Russia wants to convince its people through stories of its military gains. And neither wants to talk about the casualties in their ranks or the alleged crimes that they are committing. So which side does one really believe? Verifying their figures is a tough job. This is an armed conflict after all, and access to combat zones is very limited. There are no independent observers, so we do not know how much of the information is actually being filtered, modified, blocked, or even concocted. Multiple storylines, multiple narratives, and counter-narratives are doing the rounds. My point is simple. Russia is the aggressor in the Ukraine conflict, yes. But you see, the West's monopoly on information flow is making things a lot more complex. And we cannot take every story on face value. We cannot confuse visibility with transparency. Not until the gatekeepers of the world's information keep global interests above their own.